Hello and welcome to the GameDev Outpost. In this video, we're going to talk about data tables in Unreal 5. To create a data table, we right-click in the content browser, and we can go to Miscellaneous, and you'll see Data Table. Now, when we click this, it's going to ask us for a structure. So before we create a data table, we need to create a structure. So in the content browser, we'll right-click, and we'll go up to Blueprint, and in here we'll see Structure. So let's click that, and we'll give this a naming convention, struct, whatever you want to call it, and we'll open that up. Now what's nice about structures is you can make these variables anything that you want. So I'll just randomly add 2 more variables here, and I'll save this, and we're just going to put this to the side, make this a little bit smaller, and now let's create our data table. So we're going to right click in the content browser, and we'll go to Miscellaneous, and we'll create our data table. And now we can go and find the struct that we made, the nice struct. And we'll hit OK, and we'll give this a name, DT, whatever you want. And we'll go ahead and open that up. And we'll put this to the side here so we can compare them. Right away what we'll see is we have row names. And those row names are the same as our variable names. So this can be whatever we want them to be. For demonstration's sake, how about we do a mesh in the first one, do a mesh, and then we'll do a material, and we'll do a tag. So for the mesh, we want to make this a static mesh. So we'll search for static mesh as our variable type. We're going to make this an object reference. And for the material, we're going to search for material instance. We'll make this an object reference as well. And for the tag, this could be whatever you want. It could be a name, it could be a string or a text. We'll just make this a string. And you can see in the data table, these are all updating. So we'll save our struct, and now in our data table, we can add some options. So we'll click add, and we get a new row with options. So we can put a mesh in here, our material, a tag. Let's make this the mesh. We'll make this a sphere. We'll make it the control rig sphere, and we'll give it a material. Let's go ahead and create a material. So in our content browser, we will make a material, call this M, whatever you want to call it, and we'll go ahead and open that up, and we'll give this a vector 3, a color. We'll plug this in, and we will convert this to a parameter. Let's call this color, and we'll save that and close it. And now in our content browser, we will right click on the material, and we'll create a material instance. Let's call this MI teal. And we'll go ahead and change the color for this under our global vector parameter. Color, enable it, and teal. Teal. We'll save that. Let's put our teal, MI teal, in here. And for the tag, let's just call it sphere. Okay, and for the row name, let's just rename this. We'll call this sphere. Now let's add another option. So we'll make another one, and for this mesh, we'll do a cube. We'll make this the meter by a meter cube. And for the material, let's create another material instance. So we'll duplicate this one, and we'll call this one MI bleh. We'll just make this a bleh teal. Just bring this down and make it dirty. Darken it. And in our data table, we'll go ahead and add that bleh material. And we'll give the tag name, we'll just call this cube. And we'll rename the row name to cube. Now already you can see how this is really useful, right? You can start to put together collections. Really, data tables can be used in many different ways. The main way that it's usually used is in a blueprint to make something like a tool or something that just has a little bit of usability that you can go through these collections and swap them out. So let's save this data table, and we're going to close all of this. We'll close all of this, and let's go ahead and create a new blueprint. So under blueprint, we'll make a blueprint class, make it an actor, and we'll just call this BP, whatever you want to call it. And we'll open this up. And now the main thing that we want is our data table. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to add our data table. So we're going to create a data table. We'll call this DT, whatever you want to call it. And we want to make this data type of data table. So we'll look for data table. And under object types, you're going to see data table object reference. And we'll expose this, and we'll compile and save. And now, by default, let's go ahead and put our data table in there. So now we have our data table. The question is, how do we use it? For our purposes, we're going to do this in the construction script. So we have our data table, but we want to get information from it. If we drag off of our data table, and we look for data table, you'll see that we have a few options here. So we can get row names, we could get the structure, column. The main one that we want is the get data table row names. So if we go back to our data table, right, these are our row names right here. So let's get our row names, and it's an array, right? So it's more than one. It's one or more, so this is an array. So on this pin, we're going to right click and we're just going to promote this to variable. And we'll call this our options. And we're going to expose this so we can see it. And let's compile and save. And you'll see that this is empty. And now, if we go ahead and drag out our blueprint into the world, we can see under our default settings that we have our exposed data table. This is the data table that we're using. And we have our options here. These are the options that are in our data table. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to get the information from each one of these, right? We want to get the information from the sphere, from the cube. So let's go ahead and copy this data table reference. And let's look for those data table options again. Now these are all the data table options, but if we scroll down, we can see that there's one more under utilities, get data table row. So this is where we're going to choose our row name, and then the out row is going to be the mesh, the material, the tag. So let's go ahead and promote the row name to a variable, and we'll just call this choice, and we'll expose this so we can see it, and we'll plug this in, and let's compile and save, and we're going to get yelled at because it wants us to do something with the out rows. So we have to go ahead and do that first. So in the out row, this is actually your structure, and we want to break this structure. So we're going to type in break, and we'll do break struct nice 01. Right, that's the structure that the data table was built on. So once we do that, we can see our mesh, our material, and our tag. And those we picked based on the choice that we make. So let's go ahead and promote this mesh to a variable, and we'll just call it mesh, and we'll expose it, and we'll promote the material, and we'll expose it, and we will promote the tag and expose it. So for each of the rows that are found, right, so if it actually returns a proper row, one of the options that are actually in our data table, we're going to set them. We're going to set the mesh, the material, and the tag to those options. And if there isn't a row found, we're going to set them to nothing. So let's go ahead and compile and save. And now, if we go and take a look at our options here, right, these are our options that we know of. We have a sphere and a cube, and it's set to none. If we change this to sphere, Ah, look at that. We get our mesh and our material. Actually, we didn't expose the tag. And we'll expose the tag so we can see it. And when we change that choice, right, we get our mesh, our material, and our tag. So we can change this to cube, and we get our cube, our material, and our tag. So now from here, you could go through and actually set a static mesh to this choice. You could set the static mesh's material to this choice, and you could also set the tag. But this is more about data tables. And honestly, the sky's the limit with them. You can nest so many different variable types on the structure into the data table. It's a very convenient feature. All right, guys, if this video was useful and it helped, please let me know by commenting down below and liking the video. Thanks, guys.